Well, it looks like we'll have a dramatic face-off on Capitol Hill this week between Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and the woman accusing him of sexual assault 36 years ago when they were both in high school. Christine Blasey Ford has tentatively agreed to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday, but her lawyers and committee staff are still negotiating the details. Right now, we can tell you about the latest Fox News poll, which shows this controversy has hurt public support for the judge. When asked, who do you believe, 36% say the accuser, Ford, while 30% say Kavanaugh. 1/3 say they're unsure. And when asked whether they support the judge's confirmation to the Supreme Court, voters say no by a margin of 10 points. Last month, before the allegation, the negative margin was just 1 point. Meanwhile, but first, let's get the latest on all these developments from Fox News Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill. Mike.
Chris, while there is a tentative agreement for this hearing, it is still not entirely clear if it will happen. Vice President Pence says in the end, the Senate will confirm.
I believe that Judge Brett Kavanaugh will soon be Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
But first, the effort continues to have Christine Blasey Ford tell her story to lawmakers, with Kavanaugh given a chance to respond. Chairman Grassley has threatened to go right to a committee vote on Monday if there is no deal. And a White House spokeswoman responding, 1 week ago, Dr. Christine Ford claimed she was assaulted at a house party attended by 4 others. Since then, all 4 of these individuals have provided statements to the Senate Judiciary Committee denying any knowledge of the incident or even having attended such a party. Then there's a controversy following the bombshell New York Times report on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Advisors to Mr. Trump are strongly urging the president not to follow through on threats to fire him. Rosenstein was quick to deny the report. I never pursued or authorized recording the president, and any suggestion that I have ever advocated for the removal of the president is absolutely false.
On Judge Kavanaugh, with a 51-49 Republican majority, the key will be keeping the GOP unified. Chris?
Mike Emanuel reporting from Capitol Hill. Thanks for that. Joining me now, a key member of the Judiciary Committee, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. We should note, for the second week in a row, we invited all 10 committee Democrats to join us, and for the second week, none of them accepted. And with that, Senator Graham, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
You must be mean.
Well, or they don't want to talk. What's the latest on negotiations over having this hearing? What issues have been settled? What issues are still outstanding? And how close are you to getting fed up with a witness dictating to the committee the terms of her testimony?
Well, Chairman Grassley's bent over backwards to make this happen. The offer is Thursday at 10 o'clock. She made 10 conditions to her lawyer. We accepted 6. We're not going to turn over to the other side how many witnesses to call. There'll be 2 witnesses, Dr. Ford, then Judge Kavanaugh, and we'll hire our own counsel. They contest those 2 things. If they continue to contest those 2 things, they won't be a hearing. If they really want to be heard, they can be heard in a small room with a lot of security, limited press availability. She'll be treated fairly, but we're not going to turn the hearing over to her lawyers, and we'll see. I hope she comes. I will listen if she does.
So are you saying that the committee has basically given her a take it or leave it? These are the conditions. We've bent enough. Here are the conditions. You either accept this or there'll be no hearing?
Well, she made 10 conditions, a request for 10, we gave 6. We're not going to let her determine how many people we call. We're called Dr. Ford, then Mr. Kavanaugh is the way you would do it in any other situation, and we will hire our own lawyers, and that's it. If they can't accept that, that means they really don't want to testify. Judge Kavanaugh is ready to go right now, Monday, Thursday, anytime. And here's what I tell my colleagues. This accusation has to be looked at in terms of our legal system. It's too old for a criminal trial. It's 36 years old. You couldn't bring a civil suit because you can't tell the court what time it happened and where it happened. And if you tried to get a warrant based on this, you couldn't get a warrant because the 3 people named by Dr. Ford as having been at the party outside of Kavanaugh all say they don't know what she's talking about. So you couldn't go to criminal trial. You couldn't sue civilly. You couldn't even get a warrant. But I will listen to what she has to say.
I want to ask you about one of these conditions, or one of the things that you've rejected, the idea that an outside counsel, a woman, will do the questioning for your side.
Yeah.
Is that pure optics? Is that basically that the 11 men who are on the Republican side of the Judiciary Committee don't want to be seen as being disrespectful or insensitive to a woman who says that she was the victim of sexual abuse?
Well, we got 11 politicians who haven't done a trial in about 20 years. I thought it'd be really smart to have somebody come in and knows what the hell they're doing, to ask the questions, to be respectful. You know, I don't know what Dr. Ford expected us to do with an anonymous letter. If she wanted to stay anonymous, those who betrayed her need to apologize. But she will be treated respectfully, but she will be challenged, just like Judge Kavanaugh. When I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan, I wasn't just a white male Republican. I was some kind of really smart, wonderful person. I know what the game is here. I am no different now than I was then. I may ask questions, feel a need to, but I think it'd be smart to have a professional litigator do this. Give Miss Ford, Dr. Ford, a chance to be heard. Give Judge Kavanaugh a chance to be heard. Compare what she says with everything else in the record, and I'll make a decision.
President Trump was pretty restrained on this issue until Friday when he tweeted this. I have no doubt that if the attack on Dr. Ford was as bad as she says, charges would have been immediately filed. I ask that she bring those filings forward so that we can learn date, time, and place. Now, you know, and I know, that Ford has said that she didn't say anything about this to anyone for decades, and that brought the president's tweet a sharp response from one of the few undecided key Republican senators, Susan Collins. Look.
I was appalled by the president's tweet. We know that allegations of sexual assault are one of the most unreported crimes that exist. So I thought that the president's tweet was completely inappropriate and wrong.
Senator, does the president realize, and frankly, do you realize, that if you're seen, if all of you are seen as not treating this woman sensitively, respectfully, that this nomination could go down?
Well, here's what I do know. I was a prosecutor, defense attorney, and a judge. For every woman that comes forward regarding an allegation like this, God only knows how many never come forward. Also know that sometimes people are accused of things they didn't do. I would advise the president to let us handle this. It is very true that a lot of women get abused and take it to their grave. And every now and then you have a situation where people provide inaccurate information. All I can say about this allegation is too old for a criminal trial. You would never bring a lawsuit because it's uncertain. You couldn't even get a warrant because the people who are supposedly validating what Dr. Ford said all say they weren't there, they don't know what she's talking about. That's the context of this case.
But meanwhile, Senate Democrats, a lot of them women, say that you and your side have already insulted Dr. Ford. Take a look at this.
I consider that to be bullying. I consider that to be disregarding. I consider that to be something set up for failure.
Guess who's perpetuating all of these kinds of actions? It's the men in this country. And I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up.
Your reaction, Senator?
Well, Senator Scott and myself represent the people of South Carolina. We got elected by men and women of our state. I am not going to shut up, with all due respect. When I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan, nobody on the other side told me to shut up. They told me how fair I was, how good I was. All I would tell my colleagues, I know you hate Trump. I am going to look at this from a prism of being reasonable and fair to Judge Kavanaugh. Everything I know about Judge Kavanaugh goes against this allegation. I want to listen to Dr. Ford. I feel sorry for her. I think she's being used here. People, in my view, are using her. If she truly wanted to be anonymous, the person who brought this accusation to the public owes her an apology. I will do the following. Listen to Dr. Ford, compare that to everything in the record, and make a decision. This accusation is 36 years old. I don't know when it happened. I don't know where it happened. And all the people who have been named say it didn't happen. So these two senators have an agenda that's related to their hatred for President Trump. I'm trying to be fair here and get this thing done in a reasonable way to Judge Kavanaugh as well as Dr. Ford.
Senator, I'm sure that some of the people listening to you would say, you know, you've several times now you've talked about how weaker cases, how long ago it was, the lack of details, the lack of any corroborating evidence. Do you have an open mind on this, and is there anything that Dr. Ford could say that would persuade you to vote against Kavanaugh's nomination? Honestly.
I want to listen to her, but I'm being honest with you and everybody else. What do you expect me to do? You can't bring it in a criminal court. You would never sue civilly. You couldn't even get a warrant. What am I supposed to do? Go ahead and ruin this guy's life based on an accusation. I don't know when it happened. I don't know where it happened. And everybody named in regard to being there said it didn't happen. I'm just being honest. Unless there's something more, no, I'm not going to ruin Judge Kavanaugh's life over this. But she should come forward. She should have her say. She will be respectfully treated. What did you expect us to do with an anonymous letter to begin with? What do you expect somebody to do with an accusation this vague, not verified in any way? Bring it forward. I will listen. But I'm not going to play a game here and tell you this will wipe out his entire life, because if nothing changes, it won't with me.
I just want to point out as a fact, and I'm going to move on because we're running out of time, that there is no statute of limitations on sex assault cases in Maryland. So there are weaknesses with the case, obviously, but she could legally bring it. I just want to turn...
Well, it would go nowhere.
Okay. I want to turn to reports that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein was so concerned about the president in May of 2017 that he reportedly talked about wearing a wire to tape the president, polling the cabinet about invoking the 25th Amendment.
Right.
One last question here. Should the president fire Rosenstein, and to what degree does this revelation compromise the investigation by the special counsel, Robert Mueller, whom Rosenstein appointed?
He shouldn't fire Rosenstein unless you believe Rosenstein's lying. He said he did not do the things alleged. But there's a bureaucratic coup against President Trump being discovered here. Before the election, the people in question tried to taint the election, tip it to Clinton's favor. After the election, they're trying to undermine the president. I don't know what Rosenstein did, but I know what McCabe or Page and Strzok did. They tried to destroy this president. If Rosenstein's involved, he should be fired. If he's not involved, leave him alone. But he can't make that decision. We need a special counsel to look at this, not Mr. Horowitz, the IG. Rosenstein's doing the country a great disservice by not appointing a special counsel to look at all of this.
When you say all of this, you're talking about the FBI's behavior in investigating the president. And as far as Robert Mueller's concerned, does that investigation go forward?
It goes forward. As far as I know, there's nothing connected to Mr. Mueller. But during the campaign, it's clearly Department of Justice, the FBI, was tipping the scales for Clinton. This revelation after President Trump was sworn in shows they were trying to undermine the election. There's a bureaucratic coup going on at the Department of Justice and FBI, and somebody needs to look at it.
Senator Graham, thank you. Thanks for your time. We'll follow whatever happens with the Judiciary Committee this week.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll bring in our Sunday group to discuss those reports. Rod Rosenstein had such serious doubts about President Trump's fitness, he discussed ways to remove him from office. Plus, what would you like to ask the panel about the accusation of sexual misconduct against Judge Brett Kavanaugh? Just go to Facebook or Twitter at Fox News Sunday, and we may use your question on the air.
She clearly considers this an attempted rape. She believes that if it were not for the severe intoxication of Kavanaugh, she would have been raped.
If she shows up and makes a credible showing, that'll be very interesting, and we'll have to make a decision.
The lawyer for Christine Blasey Ford and President Trump on the allegation of sexual assault that now threatens Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Katie Pavlich from townhall.com, Juan Williams, columnist for The Hill, and author of the new book, What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? From the Washington Post, Bob Woodward, author of the bestseller, Fear, Trump in the White House. And Fox News correspondent Jillian Turner, who has no book to hawk this week.
Well, maybe I'm working on one.
Well, okay. Then we'll put that book up. All right, Bob, where do you think the Kavanaugh nomination stands now? And assuming we have this hearing, what's going to determine whether or not he gets confirmed to the Supreme Court?
What a moment. Where's Cecil B. DeMille, the great filmmaker? In 1952, he did a movie about a circus called The Greatest Show on Earth. This is about what we're going to experience. I think the good news for both sides is, and I think this is little known, Senator Grassley is a real advocate of whistleblowers. He's been the person behind all the acts, and so he's going to make sure that both of them get to do it in an open, kind of fair-minded way. I think he's very sensitive to Dr. Ford's position on this. He's given speeches about the retribution that can be visited on a whistleblower. So in a sense, not perfect, but she's got significant protection.
And she has gotten at least 5 or 6 concessions from the committee so far in terms of, well, what day it's going to be held, the conditions under which this could be held. But I think it's important to note that Lindsey Graham made it clear this is not a done deal yet. We ask you for questions for the panel. And on this accusation of sexual misconduct against Judge Kavanaugh, we got this on Facebook from Glenn Dutra. Why is the committee letting the Democrats and her lawyers call all the shots about the hearing? Katie, how do you answer Glenn?
Well, it's a very sensitive issue, and as Bob said, Senator Grassley has dedicated his entire career to protecting people who come forward with accusations in a way that can be credible and meaningful, listened to, and then bear it out on results. But the problem here is that Christine Blasey Ford's attorneys have turned this into a game. The majority on the Senate Judiciary Committee has done everything possible to make this happen. They've given multiple extensions, and as you just said, they've agreed to showing up for a hearing, but they also say that there are details that have to be worked out. Now, last week, the details of those conditions were Brett Kavanaugh testifying first, unable to respond to the accusations, her testifying without him in the room. There are still things that have to be worked out in terms of where we go from here. And the bottom line is, because her attorneys have turned this into a political game, we don't know a lot about the accuser, but we sure know a lot about where her attorneys are coming from. Republicans are going to have to make a decision about when that ultimate deadline is and if they're going to move forward with the hearing or move forward with a vote. And her attorneys have the ball's in their court when it comes to whether she's going to testify ahead of that vote.
But Jillian, in this Me Too era, if no matter how fair or unfair the demands from the lawyers are, if the Republican majority, 11 men, are seen as cutting off and preventing this woman from telling her story, that's going to be political dynamite, isn't it?
Everybody's saying they want hearings. Both sides are eager, chomping at the bit for a hearing and for her to testify, but there's a lot of downside and not a lot of upside for both Republicans and Democrats here. I'd say that when it comes to the politics, Chuck Grassley's seat might not be on the line in November, but he is the most vulnerable lawmaker on Capitol Hill right now. His late night tweet storm on Friday, uncharacteristically beleaguered sounding, underscores to
playing
me,
second trombone in the band.
Exactly. Just very uncharacteristic for him, and I think underscores the catch-22 of the situation he's in politically. The Democrats were going to be angry at him no matter how he handled this. I think the MAGA crowd they're angry at him because they feel now he's being spineless. And then the anti-Trump conservatives feel that he's turning his back on a core principle. I guess they've described it as the principle that the accused doesn't have to bear the responsibility of proving their innocence. So it's a lose-lose for him.
Let's turn to the other big story this week, and that is the report in the New York Times that in May of 2017, shortly after he took office, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, was so concerned about Donald Trump's behavior that he talked to some of his colleagues at Justice and the FBI about wearing a wire to secretly tape the president and also polling cabinet members about invoking the 25th Amendment to the Constitution to unseat him. Here's the one thing that President Trump has said about this so far.
You've seen what's happened at the FBI. They're all gone. They're all gone. They're all gone. But there's a lingering stench, and we're going to get rid of that, too.
Juan, what do you make of this story, and what do you think the president's going to do when he talks about that lingering stench?
Well, the real news here is that the president has authorized release of this FISA document, released also some of these emails, these transactions. That's how we know about the McCabe email that suggests that Rod Rosenstein was looking at the 25th Amendment or secretly taping the president. I think it's a fool's errand for a journalist to speculate as to is it right, is it wrong. But I will note this. There's no evidence that he actually pursued or actually did it. You'll note in his statement, Chris, he says, I never authorized or pursued such activity. So if that becomes clear that, in fact, he's lying about it, then that's something else. But my point to you is this. The president wants that FISA document released. A lot of his supporters, especially the hard right people in the Freedom Caucus of the House, Devin Nunes and others, have pushed this idea, get it out there, because it would therefore justify the president going after this investigation, not only firing Rosenstein, but remember, he just tweeted this week, he doesn't have an attorney general. He's still going after Jeff Sessions for not reining this thing in. So he's after Rosenstein, he's after Sessions, and I think he's after damaging the credibility, ultimately, of Robert Mueller.
Bob, there is this dispute, and frankly, different papers in town are on different sides of this issue, whether or not Rosenstein, he apparently said it, at least the part about wearing the wire. There's a question as to whether he was serious or whether he was being sarcastic. I have to say, on the overall issue of concern and to some degree chaos or disarray in the White House, this reads like a chapter right out of your book.
It does. But the whole question, and this is the great advantage of working long term on a book like this, you can check and you can talk to enough people. Was he joking or was he not? And the key issue was action taken, and I've seen no evidence that action was taken. But on this business of the FBI and the Justice Department, and you had Lindsey Graham saying, let's have another special counsel to investigate. Oh, that's exactly what we need, another special counsel to get to the bottom of things. There is, at the same time, a smell about all of this, and what the FBI has done, it does, and the Justice Department does not have clean hands. But we can't live in an environment where we're going to solve all our problems with massive special counsel investigations. You really have to let somebody kind of clean house and figure this out.
All right. We have to take a break here. We'll see you.